Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little strange. Imagine turning the dial on an old radio, one of those heavy, dust-covered boxes with dials that click, and you land on a station that shouldn't exist. No DJs, no static, just one voice. And it's your mum's. Not just sounding like her, it is her. Every lullaby she ever sang, every grocery list she ever muttered, every bedtime story from your childhood playing on a loop. A voice that should only live in memory. You
Sure you're ready for this?
Because I'm not gonna lie. If your mom ever grounded you for sneaking cookies, this story might just ground your soul. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your city and local time. I love seeing where in the world this finds you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the edge of a town that doesn't show up on maps anymore. The roads curl like old film reels, cracked and half forgotten. Behind a thicket of cypress trees, there's a squat brick building with a crooked antenna swaying in the breeze. It smells like burnt dust and cold metal. On the door, a faded sticker says, I am 1125 KMMR. Always mums, always memory. You step inside. The air is thick with a sweetness that reminds you of warm milk and Vicks Vapor Rub. The carpet crunches under your shoes like someone spilled cereal decades ago and never cleaned it up. And in the center of the room, a radio console, gleaming, untouched. You twist the knob, expecting static. But instead, her voice fills the room. Honey, don't forget your lunch, it's on the second shelf, right behind the juice. It's not just the words, it's the intonation. The sigh she made after honey. The faint shuffle of her slippers in the background. This isn't a recording, it's a memory. Yours. You sit down in a dusty swivel chair. It squeaks, the same way the kitchen stool did back home. The radio plays on. Back in the late 1940s, these small community stations were everywhere, run by volunteers and funded by penny roll donations. They'd read obituaries, play church choir recordings,
Announce lost dogs, but KMMR, it was built differently.
A war vet named Clyde Maynard set it up not to broadcast, but to preserve. Preserve what exactly? The FCC thought it was just another oddball station with low reach. But Clyde filed a different patent, one not for transmission, but for emotional
Resonance imprinting. Supposedly, he discovered that magnetic tape could hold not just sound, but the weight of feeling.
That certain voices, especially those of mothers, created a kind of sympathetic frequency that stayed behind, even after the reels stopped spinning. Historians still argue about whether Clyde was a brilliant fringe innovator, or just a man with too much grief and too many microphones. What you hear next confirms your suspicion. Remember when we built the couch fort and I accidentally knocked it over, trying to bring popcorn? You never told anyone that story. You blink. The wallpaper is peeling in a pattern that looks suspiciously like birthday balloons. One corner of the room is colder than the rest. Something is looping, not just the broadcast, but the room itself. Every time you glance back at the door, it's a little further away. Funny how memory works, isn't it? Your mind wanders to the Cold War, when the government toyed with signal-based psychological operations, voice projections, hidden frequencies, even experiments with motherly tones meant to calm soldiers under stress. They believed that maternal voices could suppress panic responses better than any sedative. One declassified document, only partially legible, referred to a project called Operation Cradle. It tested repeated maternal phrases played over radio waves to improve morale in isolated listening posts. Guess which station kept operating long after the program was shut down? Still, experts can't agree if what you're hearing is even physical. Some say it's residual electromagnetic energy. Others whisper about cognitive bleed, a phenomenon where your own memories leak outward and reconstruct themselves in sensory form. You reach for the dial, it resists. You were so brave that day when the dog chased you. I watched from the porch and couldn't stop laughing. The dog, the porch, the feeling of your scraped knee, the smell of cut grass. It's all here, encoded, replayed, forever. You add. Notice a drawer beneath the console. Inside is a stack of handwritten notes, all in different handwriting, all saying the same thing. I heard her too. You put the drawer back. The room dims slightly, as if the story is settling into its favorite groove. The radio hums alive, and outside the window, nothing moves, but you feel like someone just tucked in the whole world. Sleepy yet? Good, because this station only gets clearer the closer you are to dreaming, and trust me, this was just the beginning. The chair beneath you gives a slow sigh, like an old friend remembering a joke. The room feels warmer now, not because of any heater, but because the voice on the radio has shifted tone. It's softer, slower. The kind of voice used for reading stories during thunderstorm blackouts. You were scared of the basement, remember? I always said there were no monsters, but I left the light on anyway. The light bulb overhead flickers right on cue. You glance at the old broadcasting equipment. In the corner, dials, knobs, cracked meters with red needles that twitch like anxious fingers. Everything looks untouched since the early 1950s, except there's a stack of newspapers under a broken window, yellowed with age. One headline jumps out at you: New radio tower funded amid espionage concerns. May 1951. This is when the Cold War was just warming up. Paranoia came bottled and sold in every suburban pantry. If you weren't hiding under a desk from fallout drills, you were tuning into government-approved radio that promised everything was fine while the neighbors disappeared. But some communities, tiny, forgotten ones like this, built their own stations, places where fear got filtered through familiar voices. Clyde Maynard, the man who founded KMMR, believed no voice was more trusted than a mother's. He once wrote in a letter to his sister, "Truth doesn't live in the headlines, it lives in how your mother says your name when you come home late." People say Clyde worked on cryptographic signals during the war. He had access to sound-slicing tech, audio layering devices, tools meant for spies. But instead of embedding codes in music or Morse, he embedded something else. Comfort. Not to be decoded, but to be felt, and you feel it now, don't you? The static in the room is comforting, like rain on an aluminum roof. Still, something odd happens. The voice shifts again. "I'm not mad about the window. I just wanted you to be careful. You always rushed to catch the ice cream truck, the window. This window. You suddenly notice a tiny crack along the bottom right pane, exactly the kind you left back home when you threw a tennis ball too hard and too high. That detail's not on any broadcast. It's in your head, and somehow the station is pulling it out. Historians have long speculated about responsive frequencies, audio feedback loops that could interpret human emotion, even react to it. A few underground labs in the early 60s tried to make machines that would sing back to a person based on their mood. It never quite worked, but some believe that's only because they used synthetic voices. What if you used real ones? Familiar ones? You look down. The rug beneath the chair, same pattern as the one in your childhood living room. Not similar, exact. It even has the little ketchup stain near the corner, the one you never admitted to. A greasy red blotch, shaped like Idaho. You're not in a radio station anymore. You're in a space made of broadcasts and memory. A room built on things that can't be Googled, only remembered. Don't forget to brush your teeth. You used to hum while brushing, that silly little tune. A soft humming comes through the static, not from the radio, from somewhere behind you. You turn, no one's there, or maybe someone was, just one step before you noticed. Experts in audio, archaeology, a real field, believe it or not, have long debated whether analog magnetic tape can retain not just sound, but intention. The idea that reel-to-reel recorders could hold a mood, a weight of purpose, like a vinyl record capturing not just a song, but the air in the room while it was played. One tape recovered from a basement in Vermont had a woman's voice that repeated only one phrase. "It's okay now, you're safe." It had no label, no explanation. And when played, the room's temperature dropped by 4 degrees. Clyde Maynard once claimed he could tune into grief. He said grief had a frequency just above human hearing, and if you played the right voice at the right pitch, you could turn grief into peace. Some historians say he vanished because of mental decline. Others say he was recruited by a defense program. A few locals, though, especially those still living near the woods behind the station, say he never left, just turned into part of the broadcast. You blink again. The lights in the room dim like someone closing the curtains on an old theatre set. The voice on the radio hushes. "Sleep well tonight, honey. I'll be right here when you wake up." That old ache in your chest, the one you didn't even realize you were carrying, it eases, like someone pressing a warm towel over your heart. You finally understand. This station isn't haunted in the traditional sense. It's haunted by love, by leftover lullabies, and the worry behind packed lunches, and the way someone used to say, "Be careful," like it was a prayer. And as the signal deepens, as the static thickens into something that sounds suspiciously like ocean waves at midnight, you realize the broadcast hasn't ended. It's waiting for the next memory. The room no longer smells like dust. It smells like warm oatmeal. Specifically the kind with too much cinnamon, just the way you used to complain about it, even though you always finish the bowl. That's when it hits you. This place doesn't just remember sounds, it remembers you. "I know you pretended to be asleep on the school bus," the voice teases. "I saw you smile when I kissed your forehead through the window." You close your eyes and for a moment you're on that bus again. Vinyl seats sticking to your legs, the low hum of wheels on gravel, and that one radio station the driver always tuned in to that played soft country, even if no one liked it. But here, inside this strange little station, the past plays smoother than any cassette. No pops, no skips, just a carefully curated mixtape of you, narrated by someone who once knew every corner of your heart. You walk toward the broadcast console again. There's a humming now, not mechanical, but harmonic, like someone softly tuning a cello. The needle on the VU meter twitches in rhythm with your breath. It's not just playing to you, it's playing with you. You run your fingers along the edge of the console. The metal is slightly warm. There's an etching scratched into the side you hadn't seen before. A single word, Ever Voice, the term, floats in your brain like something from a brochure that never got printed. You remember reading, years ago, about an experimental archive project in the late 50s. Supposedly, a group of engineers in Nevada tried to design a library not of books, but of voices. ones that could emulate parental presence long after someone was gone. One early concept proposed by a researcher, Dr. Evelyn Morstad, claimed that memory retention is exponentially stronger when linked to the cadence of a caregiver. Her team experimented with encoding personal messages onto long-wave radio. Only one of their prototypes ever worked, and it was called Project Evervoice, the final transmission. A mother's voice reading "Goodnight Moon" on loop, and the cow jumping over the moon, and the quiet old lady whispering "hush." That phrase echoes now softly through the building. A shiver runs down your spine, but not out of fear. You're being remembered, and that's when the door creaks open. You turn, heart slowing instead of racing, because you know what you'll see. A hallway, faintly glowing, carpeted in a pattern you haven't walked on since you were 9. Frayed edges, a juice box stain that looks like a dinosaur. And from one of the doors, light spills out. Not white, not yellow, but that soft, pale pink that used to come from the nursery nightlight. You step toward it.
You cried the first time you heard thunder, the voice on the radio says gently. So I clapped twice, made a silly face, and told you the clouds were bowling. The memory crashes into your chest like a wave. You laughed through the tears
that night. And every time it stormed after that, you'd whisper, "Strike," under your breath. The hallway leads you into a smaller room. Not a studio. A bedroom. Your bedroom. Or rather, the best version of it your memory could stitch together. The stuffed animals are all in their original spots. The bookshelf leans slightly to the left. There's that poster of a rocket ship that glowed in the dark, even when the lights were on, and at the foot of the bed an old transistor radio. You pick it up, it crackles. "This one's for you, sweetheart," the voice says, tuning in from wherever love never turns off. The static blends into soft music, the kind made from lullabies, breeze, and distant porch swings. You sit down on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the blanket folds, because even here you don't want to ruin the illusion. Outside the window, nothing moves, but there's a sense that the town around the station is listening too. Like every empty diner booth, every quiet gas station, every rusted mailbox is tuned into the same frequency. Historians will still debate this, of course, whether the human brain is just very good at reconstructing comfort, or if something deeper happens in places like these. A few will bring up a 1964 experiment at a university in Michigan, where students exposed to low-frequency, familiar audio loops reported vivid emotional hallucinations and, in some cases, regained repressed childhood memories. But those files were buried, just like this town. "I saved every drawing you gave me," the voice continues. "Even the one where I look like a giraffe. You were so proud of it." You smile. You remember that one. The paper was crumpled, but she taped it on the fridge anyway. You lie back on the bed. The mattress creaks in all the right places. There's a tinny click as the broadcast ends, just for a moment. Silence. But not the scary kind. The kind of silence that happens right before someone tucks you in, and then the voice returns. "I'm not really gone, you know. I'm just between
songs."
The room breathes with you. Not literally, of course, but the walls seem to expand and contract in perfect sync with your chest. There's no breeze, no ventilation, just the steady, ghost-soft rhythm of your own remembering. The radio is still.
Warm in your hands. You sit up slowly, and for a moment, you're convinced you hear someone pacing softly down the hall, like your mum used to when she couldn't sleep, always checking on you 3 or 4 times a night, pretending she just
wanted water. You were snoring with your mouth open again, the voice jokes. I almost closed it with a marshmallow just to see what would happen. It's the kind of jab only a parent can make, half scolding, half affectionate, and weirdly surgical, in how fast it cuts through the fog. You set the radio down on the desk. It lets out a satisfied click, like an old dog settling onto a familiar rug. Then you notice something strange. A filing cabinet sits in the corner, one you're positive wasn't there a moment ago. Its top drawer is slightly open. On the front is a crooked label, handwritten in loopy cursive, Cabin Order 3, July 14th, 1952. You tug it open. Inside there's a journal. The leather binding is worn with a faded sticker of a smiley face in the corner. Not modern, one of those early decals made of brittle plastic and fading dye. You open it, expecting randomness. Instead, you find story after story, all dated and signed July 14th, 1952, 3:17 a.m. Heard her again tonight. Cabin 3. No one else did. She called my name just once. Said she forgave me. I don't know what for. Each entry is written by a different person, but they all mention the same location. Cabin Letter 3. A small soundproof room built behind the station, originally for recording emergency broadcasts. Or at least that was the official line. Back in the early 50s, it was common for radio stations to have test bunkers. Rooms meant to simulate long-term isolation in the event of nuclear fallout. Government psychologists wanted to know how people would cope without human contact. The twist? Some of these rooms came with customized radio feeds, pre-recorded voices of family members designed to soothe and simulate normalcy. In theory, it was brilliant. In practice, it was horrifying. One test subject allegedly spent 23 days in a soundproof room where a loop of his mother's voice played on repeat. But the audio had flaws, half sentences, stutters, the occasional wrong name. By the time they pulled him out, he had renamed the chair, the lamp, and his shoes after family members. They shut the program down, except KMMR didn't. Clyde Maynard petitioned to keep Cabin 3 open as a local oral history project. But what he really built was a place where memories and voices were archived, not as data, but as ambiance. Instead of just collecting interviews, he wired the room to record subconscious noises, sleep-talking, murmurs, whispers. Every sound you made in that cabin stayed there. You remember hiding in the closet during storms, the voice on the radio says gently. I waited with a flashlight, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. The lights in the room flicker once, in perfect imitation of a lightning flash. It's not just playing memories, it's responding. The carpet beneath your feet darkens slightly, as if absorbing the weight of what you remember. Your shoelaces feel damp, like you just came inside after running through wet grass. One of your socks is twisted. How did the station know that? More importantly, why is it trying to comfort you? Some say old buildings hold energy. That time doesn't fully pass in places where memory has been rehearsed enough times. What if this isn't just a station? What if it's a place built entirely from retold love, a place where repetition becomes architecture? You always ran too fast, down the hill behind school. I told you not to, you never listened, and I never minded. The bedroom window now shows a hill, green, golden, and eternal, not just a projection, a perfect rendering of that one moment from third grade where you wiped out spectacularly trying to race a squirrel. You move closer to the glass, expecting it to fade, but it doesn't. You can even hear the crunch of gravel if you focus. And then, a noise behind you. Not threatening, just present. You turn slowly. The closet door in the room creaks open. Inside, not clothes, just shelves, each holding a single
reel of audio tape, hundreds of them, all labeled with a name, not famous names, not even full names.
Just first names: Tommy, Lynn, Eliza, Devin, you. Yes. One of them says your name. You reach for it, fingers trembling not from fear but from something deeper. Reverence, maybe curiosity, maybe longing. You take it to the reel-to-reel machine.
In the corner, it starts spinning the moment you click it in, but there's no sound, just the faint hiss of the past turning. Then the voice. You don't have to remember everything.
Just the parts that made you feel loved. The room dims. The edges of the desk blur. You feel the weight of 100 bedtime stories, forgotten songs, half-spoken goodbyes that you tried not to make a big deal of, but secretly wished you hadn't.
Rushed. Clyde. Maynard may have designed this place to preserve audio. But what he accidentally preserved was grace, and now that grace is yours to hear again.
The tape keeps turning. You don't even remember pressing play, but somehow it knew. It always knows. The machine hums like a heartbeat, and with every pass of the reel, it feels less like you're listening to something, and more like you're being remembered in return. The room around you softens. The edges round out. Nothing sharp here, just the warm curves of nostalgia. Even the air feels like it's been pre-warmed in a sunlit car on a cold day. And then, you always hated brushing your hair, said it hurt. So I'd tell stories while I did it, just to make you sit still. You smile involuntarily. You remember sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at a scratched-up VHS case while a gentle hand tugged through your tangled mess of after-school chaos. The stories weren't even that good, but they worked. You pull away from the reel-to-reel machine. It keeps playing, but softer now, like it's humming to itself. There's another door in the far corner of the bedroom, one you didn't see before. Painted pale blue, the exact color of the hallway in your first apartment. You reach for the knob. It's warm. It opens into a narrow stairwell. Descending, you go down. Each step creaks but softly, like the sound has been wrapped in cotton. The walls are covered in scribbled notes, taped Polaroids, and torn-out notebook pages, all handwritten, all addressed to Mom. Some are sweet, some apologetic, some just say, "I miss you," in 100 different ways. About halfway down the stairs, you notice a wall-mounted plaque with a faint engraving. The archive room, Estel 1953, Project Echo Nest Echo Nest. You've heard that name before, haven't you? Some conspiracy theory about forgotten military tech? Or maybe a strange article in that one issue of Popular Mechanics your grandfather kept in the garage? You can't recall, but it fits here, because what you walk into next feels military, but softened, like someone took the Pentagon and replaced all the security cameras with teddy bears. It's a room of filing cabinets, tape recorders, and index cards, old school, analog, no computers, and in the center of it all, a desk with a single microphone, a leather armchair, and an ashtray with a single untouched cigarette that smells like rose perfume. This was the origin point. A note taped to the microphone reads, "This is not for broadcasting, this is for remembering. If you're speaking, you're home." You sit just for a moment, and the chair knows you. It reclines just a bit too far back, like that one broken recliner your uncle used to sink into on Sundays. There's no voice this time, just you and silence until you speak. "I'm still here." No one answers. But something in the room shifts. Not physically, but atmospherically, like your voice has been tucked into a drawer, wrapped in bubble wrap and labeled "Handle with care." You flip through some of the index cards on the desk. They're arranged by date, not name. Odd. You pull one at random. May 18th, 1960, entry, Wilma G. Tulsa. Okay. She said, "Don't stay out too late." I did. She was right. The sky looked different after that night. You put it back. Another, June 22nd, 1981 entry, Marcus R., San Diego. CA, I broke the window and blamed the wind. She laughed, said even the wind gets tired of taking blame. These aren't just memories, they're confessions. Tiny, unremarkable, unrecorded things that somehow feel like the entire scaffolding of being human. They're echoes that only ever bounced off one set of ears. Ears that listened not because the stories were grand, but because you were the one telling them. Somewhere along the wall, you notice a small rotary dial telephone mounted beside a plaque. The cord is frayed and the earpiece is worn from use. Above it, the words, "Try again." She always answers on the second ring. You hesitate, then dial. It rings once, twice, and then... Hello? Your breath catches. It's her. Not just the voice, but the exact cadence. The way she always said,
Hello, as if expecting you, as if she'd been waiting. You don't say anything. Is that you, baby? Silence, and then she laughs. Not a loud laugh, just that warm, dry, chuckle kind. The one that used to follow after. You're being dramatic when you told her you were literally starving. I knew you'd find this place someday, she says. You try to respond,
but your voice gets lost in the warmth of the moment. Then she continues a little slower. You know, I never really left, you just stopped tuning in. You grip the phone a little tighter. Tears are a funny thing in this kind of place. They don't fall, they float, held by air so thick with memory it might as well be syrup. You've done so well, I'm proud of you, even if I don't say it out loud. You want to ask how any of this works, why it exists if she's real. If you are, but the words don't come. You'll hear me again, even when this station goes quiet. Some part of me is still whispering in the fridge light, the backseat radio, the sound the washing machine makes when it clicks just so. All those things. You forgot to miss a soft click. The line goes dead, you hang up the phone, and somehow it doesn't feel like a goodbye. You stay in the chair longer than you mean to. The room has that kind of stillness you only feel after a storm. Everything's intact, but the pressure has changed. The static from the old machines now sounds more like rain against glass. Or maybe that's just your memory layering itself over the noise. You stand up slowly, no rush. There never is here. The stairwell is still behind you, the hallway still glowing faintly upstairs. But now there's a corridor you hadn't noticed before, lined with photographs, not glossy 4x6s. These are old, matte, sepia-toned, curling at the corners like they're trying to retreat into themselves. Each photo is of a radio, that's it. Just radios, different shapes, colors, decades, some portable, others the size of furniture. One photo shows a little girl hugging a transistor radio like a teddy bear. Another shows a family crowded around a console as if they're watching fireworks. But in every photo, the radio is the center, the anchor, the hearth. A small plaque beneath the final photo reads July 17th, 1974, voice transmission number 1 echo band 13.1 Hz. The moment they all heard her at once. You stare at the words, heard her at once. The hallway ends at another door. This one's different, heavier, metal with rivets, industrial. There's a slot in the center like a mail chute. and someone has pushed a cassette tape halfway through. It, on its label, handwritten in block letters, "Do not erase, test tape." You pull it free and walk back toward the archive room. There's a player built into the wall, hidden under a sliding panel labeled experimental playback. You insert the tape, it clicks, then hums, and the voice returns, but it's not the same as before. This isn't just your mother's voice, it's layered, dozens of voices all speaking at once, and yet somehow it's still understandable. A harmony made from bedtime reminders, whispered encouragements, and soft-spoken warnings not to eat glue. "Sit down, sweetheart. Take a breath. You're not lost. You're tuned in." It's like every mom in every memory from every town is taking turns reading from the same script. There's a sudden visual shift. The lights in the room flicker not from dimming but from change. The overhead bulbs fade into a faint glow of television static, casting shadows like moving clouds. The cabinets shimmer slightly as though you're seeing them through an old CRT screen. And in the corner, where there was nothing before, now stands a tall glass chamber. Inside, a radio tower. Not a replica. Not a model. A full-size steel frame. Tower folded impossibly inside this tiny room like a ship in a bottle. You approach it. It hums. Not with power, but presence. Every rivet seems to vibrate with something between nostalgia and grief. A small sign hangs from one of the rails. Tower Bajero, the signal that waits. You reach out. Your fingers barely graze the metal before a flicker of memory runs through. Suddenly you're standing in your childhood backyard, barefoot in cold grass, looking up at a starless sky. In your hand, a walkie-talkie. In your ear, a crackle. And then, "I can hear you, baby. Come inside before you catch cold." But this wasn't real. You imagined that moment. You wanted to believe she was still on the other side of that toy speaker, and here, now, it becomes real. Because this place doesn't distinguish between memory and longing. To the station, they're the same. Audio engineers in the 1980s briefly flirted with the theory of resonance memory, the belief that a strong emotional moment imprinted not just on your brain, but on the surrounding environment, like an audio fossil. Most dismissed it. Some tried to patent devices to read emotional echoes in furniture. No one succeeded, except maybe someone did. Because this tower, this impossible artifact, feels like it's alive with old hopes, forgotten wishes, the kinds of things whispered into pillowcases, promises made through bedroom doors left slightly ajar. You stand there for a long time. The tower never moves. It just waits. "She always said you'd come back here," a voice says softly behind you. You turn. There's no one, just the microphone again. This time, it's already recording. A soft red light pulses like a heartbeat. And in front of it, a blank cassette, labeled "For Later." You sit. You speak. You tell her something you've never said out loud, not because it was a secret, but because it always felt too small to matter, and yet here, it matters more than anything. I didn't forget you. I just got older. You finish the tape, you seal it, you place it in the drawer marked ongoing transmissions. The room lets out a long, low hum, like a sigh through a cathedral. And the voice returns once again. "Good. That's all I needed to hear." The drawer clicks shut, and the moment it does, the floor beneath you seems to shift. Not violently, not like an earthquake. Just a subtle recalibration, as if the building is adjusting itself to make room for your story. Another groove in the architecture of remembering. You turn to leave the archive room, but the door you entered through is gone. In its place is a curtain, heavy velvet, deep maroon, the kind used in old theatres. It moves slightly as though stirred by applause from a show that ended years ago. You brush it aside. You walk into what can only be described as a living room, but not anyone you've ever personally known. No, this is the idea of a living room, an amalgamation of every Sunday afternoon you half-napped through, every static-filled broadcast of The Lawrence Welk Show you ignored while playing on the floor, every plate of sugar, cookies wrapped in wax paper, and just for guests. There's a sofa here, perfectly slouched in the middle. The armrest has a familiar indent where a head once leaned, night after night, with the TV still on. A lamp casts a warm glow, not too bright. A crocheted blanket sits folded on the backrest, even though no one ever used it, because it wasn't meant to be used. It was meant to be present. This was her favorite spot, the voice says. She'd put on her shows and pretend not to care whether you were paying attention, but she always peeked at you during the commercials. The old television is on. Black and white. No cable. Just fuzz. But every now and then, the static parts for a second to flash an image. Your third-grade drawing of a family picnic, a report card you didn't want to show her, the cake you tried to bake for her birthday that came out shaped like Ohio. Each flicker feels like a postcard from your own brain, mailed back to you with the return address smudged. You sit on the sofa. You shouldn't. But you do. The cushions give way just enough. There's a hum behind the wall. Not the sound of electricity, more like a lullaby that someone is humming in another room. And that's when the hallway opens up again, glowing with that familiar, uncanny warmth. You follow it. The hallway leads to a small kitchen, and this is the trap. Because the kitchen is perfect. The linoleum squeaks just right. The fridge
hums in that way that used to comfort you during thunderstorms.
The smell, somehow, impossibly, is of baked ziti, apples, and fresh laundry. There's a calendar on the wall. The date circled is the one you always forgot, her birthday. Not her real birthday, her favorite birthday. The one she made up when she stopped counting. You always forgot, the voice says gently. And I always acted like I didn't notice. You want to say something? You want to argue, maybe? That you were busy? That you had work? That it was hard to remember everything, but the room doesn't care. The room just nods, quietly. You open the fridge. No food, just cassette tapes. Each labeled in the same careful hand. When you got sick. That time you cried in the backyard. The day you moved out. You don't listen to them. Not yet. You just take one. The one marked the first time. You heard my voice on the radio. You carry it like an egg in your hand because it is fragile, not the tape. The moment. The hallway twists again. This place never stays still. It leads you to a screened-in porch, overlooking nothing. Just static. A swirling horizon of untuned frequencies. Ghosts of forgotten broadcasts. Out here, the rocking chair rocks on its own. Just once. Then stills. You sit, the voice crackles softly through. The old intercom mounted on the wall. You don't have to stay much longer. I know you've got places to be, but I wanted you to hear this before you go. There's a long pause. The kind of pause people make when they're working up to something. Then the radio plays something different. Not a story, not a phrase, it's a sound, the sound of her laugh, Not the polite one, not the fake one she used for neighbors or teachers. The real one, the shoulder-shaking, snort-containing, nose-scrunching laugh that only came out when you said something truly stupid or brilliant or both. And you remember when she made that laugh? You were 6. You made a snowman with a pizza box for a hat and told her it was Uncle Alfredo. She laughed for 5 full minutes. You remember now? And the laugh on the tape is exactly that one. Not a copy. Not a reenactment. The actual sound. I saved the best ones, she says quietly, even if you forgot. The porch light flickers once, you stand, because it's time. There's no exit sign, no formal goodbye, just a small sign by the door. Signal fades naturally, no need to rush. And as you walk back into the hallway, the kitchen, the bedroom, the archive room, they're not the same, not quite. The walls are just a little farther away. The colors a little grayer, like the station is gently powering down, because the broadcast did what it was meant to do. And now it's time for quiet. You step through the last doorway, and it closes behind you without a sound, not a slam, not even a click, just the whisper of finality, like a book shutting in a library no one's entered for decades. The hallway you find yourself in now is different from the others. No flickering lamps, no nostalgic wallpaper, just clean white walls, bare. The smell is nothing, no cinnamon, no dust, no trace of home, just sterile air. It's unsettling at first, until you realize what this part of the station is. It's silence, not the eerie, hollow kind, the earned kind, the kind that follows closure. The space left behind when a long conversation has finally landed its last word. You walk slowly, your footsteps muffled, as if by memory foam. At the end of the hall is a window, just one, frosted, glass etched with faint shapes, impressions of faces maybe, smudges where someone once leaned close, watching for someone to return. You press your hand against it. It's warm, and behind it, just for a second, you think you see a shadow move. A silhouette that looks like it might be waving, or reaching, or both. You were always looking for signs, the voice says again. But I was never far. The voice is faint now, softer, like it's coming from farther away. But it's still her. Still that tone she used when you asked big questions. Why is the moon so bright? Why do people disappear? Will I ever forget you? The station doesn't answer with science, it answers with presence. You turn away from the window and find another door. This one isn't ornate, just a slab of painted wood. But someone has taped a photograph to it, a picture of you, at maybe 4 or 5 years old, beaming and mid-laugh covered in cake. In the background, blurred but unmistakable, is her hand reaching in to wipe your cheek. Not posed, not planned, just love caught in motion. There's a note beneath it. This is where we stored the recordings that were never played. You open the door. Inside is a narrow vault, lined with cassette decks stacked 3 stories high. No labels, no dates, just thousands, maybe tens of thousands of tapes in pale yellow cases. The walls hum like a choir holding its breath. These aren't your memories, they're everyone. A mother reading Where the Wild Things Are in a Boston accent. Another softly reciting the names of constellations in broken Spanish. One simply humming Twinkle Twinkle for 17 minutes straight. None of it broadcasted, all of it kept. Because someone might need it someday. Because someone might be alone someday. Because sometimes the greatest kindness isn't being heard, but being able to hear. We built this part just in case someone wandered too far, she says. Too long without a voice. Too many days with no softness. It's why this station exists. Not for listeners, for reminders, for the in-between moments, dishwater memories and shoe-tying rituals and phone calls that started with, "Can you hear me?" and ended with, "Drive safe." You walk slowly between the stacks, hands trailing the plastic edges of forgotten tapes. Every so often, one clicks softly in its slot, like a cat nudging your ankle. You stop in front of a small desk at the end of the aisle. There's a single recorder on it, the kind you had in middle school. You press play, it crackles, and then... "Hey, sweetie, I know you won't hear this until later, maybe years from now, but I wanted to say thank you for remembering, for
visiting, for letting me say the things I never got to say when the stove was burning and the dog was barking and I forgot where I put my glasses."
You close your eyes, you sit, because there's no rush now. The story isn't ending, it's just tapering off like a well-played lullaby. You're not alone, even when you are. Because somewhere, somehow, a voice like mine is always waiting. For someone like you. You stay until the tape finishes, not because you need to, but because it feels wrong to leave the voice hanging. You rewind it gently, tuck it back into its slot, and walk toward the final door. It doesn't creak. It doesn't
resist. It just opens like it was waiting. Beyond it.
Well, not an exit, but a broadcast tower. You step outside. The air is cool, not cold. The night sky overhead is full of quiet static, not stars, not clouds. Just a gentle shimmer like the surface of an old television in a dark room. There are no signs here, no labels, no announcements, just an open microphone on a weathered stand. You walk to it. You take a breath and, for the first time since arriving, you speak first. Your voice comes out quieter than expected. Not timid, just tender. The way someone might talk to a room that's already half asleep. You say your name. Not because anyone asked, but because it feels right. Like lighting a candle before telling
a story. The microphone hums. A red light blinks once, then again.
"Go ahead," the voice says, distant now, almost woven into the wind. "Say what you came to say." And you do. Not all at once. Not in a straight line, but you start small. You tell the microphone how strange it felt the first time you realized silence could be loud, how you once waited by the phone for a call you knew wouldn't come, just to prove to yourself that you could wait. You talk about the sweater she wore when she dropped you off at college, ugly, blue, too warm for September, and how you made fun of it to feel bigger than the lump in your throat, how you always felt bad about that. You say her name, and the microphone listens. Somewhere deep in the belly of the tower, a soft chime rings. Like an elevator, arriving on a floor no one requested. You look up. The static sky flickers for a second, just a second. You see her face. Not directly. More like the reflection you catch in the glass of a framed photo when the light hits just right. She's smiling, not the posed one, the real one. The one she used when you finally got the joke on your own. And then she's gone, but the feeling stays. You step back from the microphone. The tower begins to hum, not mechanically, but melodically. A low vibration like someone plucking a harp, string the size of a building. The ground doesn't shake. The world doesn't tilt. But something changes. You feel it in your ribs. Behind you, a bench has appeared. Simple, wooden, the kind you find at rest stops or outside rural churches. There's a radio sitting on it. Same model as the one from the beginning. You sit and turn the dial. No static. This time, just her voice. This part is for when you leave. You look out at the horizon. It's not a view. It's a frequency. A low band of silver haze where memory and longing meet. And the radio continues. You'll forget again. That's my...
Okay, you'll get busy or tired or lost.
You'll turn down the wrong street or put off calling too long, but you'll remember again, too. Maybe not here, maybe not like this. But something will echo. She pauses. You'll hear me in the way someone says your name, or in the way silence settles after someone leaves the room. You'll hear me in the beep of the microwave, the creak of the front door, the way you hum without realizing it. The bench is warm now, like someone just stood up to make you a cup of tea. You close your eyes, and the voice shifts again, this time not hers. Yours. The radio is playing your message back to you, the one you left in the archive room. It's your words, but not how you remember saying them. They've been smoothed out, softened, tucked in under a blanket of music that sounds like childhood and rain on a porch roof. It ends with your final line. I didn't forget you, I just got older. And then silence. Not the heavy kind, the grateful kind. The sky pulses gently. One star, if you can call it that, flickers red for just a moment. Like a recording light blinking off. You stand because you know what comes. Next, not an ending, just the return. You walk back toward the building. The doorway has changed. It's smaller now, cozier. Like the door to your childhood bedroom if you saw it again as an adult. Slightly shorter, the handle a little lower, the color just a bit more faded. Before you step through, you hear her voice one more time. You don't need to find me again. I'm already where you're going. You smile. You walk through, and the door closes with a whisper. The door doesn't lock behind you, it simply vanishes like it was never there to begin with, or like it served its purpose and politely excused itself. You're back in the hallway, or a hallway, but now it feels impossibly long. Not dark, not threatening. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows the last guest leaving a dinner party. You walk. The floorboards are no longer creaky. They've learned the rhythm of your steps. The walls are blank again, but this time, that feels okay. You don't need the photos anymore. The stories have already found their way inside you. Then up ahead, you see it. A small room glowing like a lantern. You step inside, and suddenly, you're in a kitchen again. Not the one from before. Not the curated memory version. This one is simpler, a little messier, a bit more real, a cracked coffee mug in the sink, a calendar stuck on the wrong month, a chair with one short leg that wobbles just enough to annoy you, and on the table, a birthday cake, not fresh, not even frosted very well. The writing is crooked. The icing is that awkward grocery store pink color. But the candles are new, waiting. One for each year you forgot to come back. You sit, and without thinking, you say, "Sorry I missed it." The radio in the corner turns on. No one touches it. It just knows. You never really missed anything. I was just practicing patience. She says it so simply, so effortlessly, like forgiveness was something she had stockpiled just for you. You stare at the cake. There are no matches, no lighter. But one by one, the candles light themselves, each one flickering softly, each one a small
victory. Each one a reminder that yes, someone remembered. You blow them out. The room dims slightly.
Not in sadness, just in transition, like the station is starting to fold itself away. The kitchen shrinks at the edges, the fridge is gone, the cabinets blur, but the warmth remains. You get up, the radio now plays something different, a broadcast from 1963, a real one, a voice reading the news, but not war or tragedy, just small-town stuff, bake sales, lost pets, church events. And finally, Mrs. Langley would like to thank whoever returned her garden shears. She says they're in better condition than when they left. You laugh, a genuine one, because even now, even after everything, this station remembers the little stuff, the doesn't matter stuff, the invisible kindnesses that nobody writes about but everybody lives by. And then the newsreader's voice fades, replaced again by hers. Okay, time to go. You've been here a while, but don't worry, this place isn't going anywhere. You walk to the door. This one does have a knob. You open it and you step into the recording studio. The first room, full circle. But now the static is gone. The smell of dust has lifted. The carpet still crunches, sure, but now it feels deliberate, like a final beat in a song that doesn't need repeating. On the console sits a tape. Your tape, the one you made, but it's not labeled. That's for you to do. There's a pen. You pick it up. You hesitate. Then you write. The time I remembered. You place the tape into the console. It clicks. Then from every speaker you hear it. Your voice. Strong, clear, honest. And her voice too, soft, layered underneath. Not talking over you, not correcting, just harmonizing, supporting, like she always did. You sit for a moment, listening to the two of you. Not a duet, a dialogue. The static outside the window thickens slightly, like a mist rolling in to carry the story off into the airwaves. You stand, you smile, and you say goodbye, not because it's the end, but because it's enough. You don't look back, not because there's nothing worth seeing, but because there's nothing more that needs seeing. The station behind you, or what's left of it, begins to blur at the edges, folding into that soft, static sky like a memory, deciding it's okay to rest now, and ahead, another hallway, not unusual at this point, but this one feels different. It doesn't try to impress you. No framed photos, no flickering bulbs, just a long, gentle slope downward, like a sidewalk leading toward the quiet part of town where porch lights hum and no one locks their doors. You walk with every step. The air gets cooler. Not cold, just calm, like the temperature inside a library. That hasn't changed since the 1970s. Eventually, you reach a room with no door, just an open arch. Inside, it's barely furnished. A folding chair, a shelf with 5 books, a cassette recorder, and a desk with a light bulb that glows soft and gold like a firefly caught in a jelly jar. On the desk, a shoebox. You open it. Inside are items that shouldn't be here, but are. A mitten you lost at age 7. A Polaroid of you at a birthday party you don't remember attending. A fortune cookie slip that reads, "You already know the answer." A single bobby pin you once borrowed and forgot to return. And a crumpled napkin with the words, "I packed you 2 extra sandwiches. You never eat enough." I saved the silly things, her voice says. The things you'd forget. That's what mums do. You pick up the napkin. The ink's smudged, but still legible. You swear you can feel the peanut butter through it. Not smell, feel. Like some part of your hand remembers holding it on the bus, even if your mind doesn't. You laugh, and then the recorder clicks on. Not automatically. You didn't press it. It just knows. And this time, the voice isn't hers. It's a collection of others. Hundreds of voices, maybe more, all layered like leaves in a scrapbook. Some young, some cracked with age, some trembling, some confident, all speaking variations of the same phrase. We remember you, not we miss you, not we're proud of you, just we remember you. And somehow that's what breaks you. Because that's all you ever really wanted, isn't it? To
know that you weren't just a guest in the lives you passed through, that somewhere, someone still carried a scrap of you. Not a highlight reel, not a photo, just a sound, a laugh, a phrase.
a trace. You rewind the tape, place it in your pocket. You walk toward the far wall where the paint is peeling just enough to suggest it's real. There's no exit, but there is a switch, the old kind, a toggle, not a button. Next to it, scrawled, in faded pencil, when you're ready to forget, flip me. When you're ready to remember again, you'll find your way back. You don't flip it. Not yet. Instead, you sit. And for a few long minutes, you just exist in the room. No mission.
No mystery.
Just you, the soft hum of a dying light bulb, and the weight of being gently remembered. Then you write a note. You don't know who it's for, maybe yourself. Maybe someone who will find it next. You just scrawl it on the back of the napkin. It
worked. She was here. You leave it on the desk and now you're ready. You flip the switch. Nothing explodes. Nothing fades to black. The lights just blink and settle. And outside, the hallway is gone. It's morning, not metaphorically, literally. The sky is that perfect pale gold of 6:47 a.m. The kind of light that makes everything look softer than it is. The kind of light that forgives. You step outside, you don't need a door, you carry everything you need.
The morning air tastes like toast and unfinished sentences. You walk barefoot across dew-wet grass, not caring where you're headed, just glad that it's away from nowhere, which is sometimes the most peaceful direction of all. Behind you, the radio station no longer looms, it rests. You could turn around, maybe see it tucked into the hillside like an old friend pretending to sleep. But you don't. Not because it's gone, but because you trust it's still there. And somehow, that's more powerful than proof. You cross a field where the wind sounds suspiciously like static, not loud, just enough to remind you that frequencies never really disappear. They just get quieter till someone tunes in again. Up ahead, a signpost, wooden, hand-painted. It reads, "Welcome to Relay." And underneath, in smaller letters, population, you. You smile, you don't mean to, but you do, because it's corny, because it's lovely, because it makes no sense and perfect sense. All at once, this place, Relay, isn't on any map. You don't remember arriving here, but everything about it feels gently familiar, like walking through a dream where the architecture is borrowed from memory and softened by grace. You step onto a sidewalk. The houses here aren't flashy. They aren't even consistent. Some are wide porches and wood panels. Others are mid-century, slabs with radio antennas on the roof. One house is shaped suspiciously like a teapot. Another is clearly just a garage that's been carpeted and renamed. Each home hums, faintly, a low, comforting thrum, the sound of people being remembered. You pass a grocery store called Moments. Their sign advertises batteries, sweets, and apologies. You don't go in, not yet. The memories it stocks will still be there when you're ready. There's a small cafe called The Second Ring. Inside, people are sipping tea and smiling like they've just remembered something important. But, forgot to tell anyone, a mother is wiping the chin of a boy who isn't hers. He lets her. She doesn't correct him. The universe doesn't mind. You sit on a bench across from the train tracks. There's no train, but there used to be. A plaque nearby reads, "Here stood the relay line, which never left but always arrived." If you listen closely, you might still hear the whistle. You do, or you imagine you do, and again, it doesn't matter which, because this town, Relay, was never meant to transport your body. It was designed for a different kind of arrival, the kind where your heart shows up 5 minutes before your mind, looks around and says, "Oh, we're home." The wind shifts. You pull something from your pocket. The cassette. The one with your name on it. The one that holds your voice. You're remembering. You're reckoning. You hold it up to the light and it glows. Only faintly, but enough to know it matters. You leave it on the bench. Because someone else will find it. Someone just like you. Someone wandering through the fog of forgetfulness. Looking for a voice to match the ache. They'll hear you, and maybe they'll leave one of their own. You walk through Relay with no destination, past a barbershop playing lullabies through its intercom, past a fire hydrant that hums a doo-wop harmony when the sun hits it right, past a mailbox labelled "For things you" meant to say. You walk until the town thins out into tall grass and gold light. And there, on the edge of it all, is another tower. Not metal, not wired, just a treehouse on stilts with a wind-up radio inside and a notebook full of song lyrics that never found.
A melody, you climb it. Because of course you do, and at the top, the wind finally carries her voice again.
You made it, baby. I knew you would. No instructions, no agenda, just that same voice that once helped you sleep when your brain wouldn't stop spinning. Stay as long as you like, or head back. It's up to you now. The treehouse sways a little. You sit cross-legged on the floor. You speak into the radio, this one powered by memory and moonlight, and you say, "I'll come back. I don't know when, but I will." The wind answers, "I'll leave the light on." And for the first time in a long time, you believe it. Time behaves differently in Relay. It doesn't tick forward like a stopwatch. It drifts, like the slow swirl of honey in warm tea. You could sit in the treehouse for an hour or a lifetime, and the only difference would be how many memories you're willing to let echo back to you. You stay. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough for your breathing to match the wind chimes on the porch of the house 2 streets over. Long enough to read the entire notebook of song lyrics and realize half of them are lullabies your mother never actually sang, but you always wished she had. You wind the radio one more time. This time, the broadcast is faint, almost a whisper. "You've done enough, sweetheart." You really have. And for once, you believe her. You climb down the treehouse ladder. Relay is even quieter now. Not abandoned, resting. A porch swing sways with no wind. A dog naps in the shade of a mailbox. Somewhere, a radio clicks off, not because the power's gone out, but because someone has finally fallen asleep. You walk back through the town, taking your time. You pass the cafe again. The chairs are empty, but a teacup is still warm. Someone's voice floats from inside, telling a story about getting lost in the grocery store as a child. The listener laughs, not because the story is funny, but because the fear feels familiar, and then you're back at the edge. The invisible line between here and there. No gate, no goodbye, just a path. You take one step, and you're back. Wherever. Back is your room, your city, your life. But something's different now, not visibly, not loudly, but deeply. Like a single gear in your chest has clicked into place. There's a radio on your nightstand, same one you've always had. But now, when you turn the dial, just past the static, just beyond the FM numbers, there's a space that shouldn't be there. An unnamed frequency. And it plays the soft sound of pages turning, someone humming while folding laundry, a voice saying, "Go on, I'm still here." You don't stay up. You don't need to. You turn off the light and you sleep. Not because you're tired, but because, for the first time in what feels like years, you feel safe. The next morning, the world returns just as it left itself, unapologetically ordinary. The garbage truck roars too early, a neighbor's car alarm chirps in protest, your phone buzzes with something forgettable. But underneath all of that noise, you carry something now. It's not a memory exactly. It's softer than that, more like a lining, a layer of resonance tucked into your thoughts, where the frequency of her voice still hums faintly beneath everything you do. You stir your coffee and hear her say, "Don't forget, it tastes better if you let it sit." You tie your shoes and she's there again. Double knot, baby, just like I showed you. You're not haunted, you're accompanied. Later that day, you find yourself holding the door open for a stranger, not because you're in a rush or even particularly generous, but because it feels like something she would have done. And maybe, just maybe, she is doing it. Through you, people say grief
Fades, it doesn't, it changes shape.
It goes from something heavy and sharp to something you carry like a pebble in your pocket. Always there. But now and then, you reach in and smile instead of flinch. That night, as you lay in bed, the radio on your nightstand flickers to life. Not loud, just enough to draw your attention. You don't turn toward it. You don't have to. You already know what it will say. "I saw you today. You held the door. I felt that." And then, "You're doing great." Even if you don't believe it yet, you close your eyes, and the radio continues, telling you stories you didn't know you'd forgotten. The day you learned to ride a bike. The time you cried because your shadow disappeared in the dark. The birthday she spent all morning baking. A cake only for it to collapse into something closer to a pancake, but you ate it anyway and told her it was perfect. It was perfect because it was hers. These are not stories written in history books. They aren't celebrated, they aren't broadcast to the masses, but they are the infrastructure of you. You drift off again without meaning to. Because here, now, the station plays through the night. Not as a reminder of the past, but as a quiet promise. You are loved, loudly, fully, and even when you forget to turn the dial. And somewhere in the soft folds of sleep, your voice answers, "I remember now. Sleep comes easy now." Not because everything's been resolved, life never really grants that kind of closure, but because something inside you has softened. The edges don't scrape as much. The ache has become something gentler, something livable. And in the dream that follows, you're back at the station, not as a visitor this time, as part of it. You walk the halls, but they no longer shift. The floors stay steady. The rooms no longer surprise you. You know where everything is. The archive, the treehouse, the door that leads to the kitchen with the sad birthday cake and the napkin that says, "I packed you 2 extra." And in the center of it all is the microphone. Still glowing, still waiting, you sit behind it. Not because you have something urgent to say, but because you can. You breathe and then you speak. If someone's listening, "Hi, I've been where you are. It's okay to feel a little lost. That's what this place is for." You reach into your pocket and find a fresh cassette. You slide it in and you record a message, not to her, not to yourself, but to the next person who stumbles into this strange little ghost of a station. Someone who just wanted to hear a voice that knew them before they knew how to be known. This is a reminder that you were loved, even when you didn't notice it. That someone remembered you, even when you thought you'd disappeared. This station is not haunted, it's holding on. And if you're here, it means you needed to be. You label the tape with care. For the one who thinks they're alone. You tuck it onto the shelf, and as you do, a small light
Above the exit flickers on, not an alarm.
not a warning, an invitation, you follow it, and outside the door, morning again. Same gentle glow, same soft hush, the kind of light that doesn't wake you with a jolt, but with a whisper. You're still here, and that's enough. You look back at the station, this time you see it clearly. Not as a building, but as a presence. Not bricks and wires, but echoes and kindness. It nods to you without moving, you nod back. And then, without fanfare, you walk away. No music, no montage, just a voice. Yours now, floating gently on the breeze. I'll leave the light on, too. The screen fades to black. The radio static fades to a heartbeat, a single whisper. Good night, sweetheart. And then, silence. The kind that tucks you in. The kind that listens back. The kind that lasts just long enough to carry you to sleep.